Welcome back to the Turn the Music Pod. Yeah, let's try that again.
No,
It's the first time I've ever screwed it up.
it's not.
It's not?
Did it once before.
All right, so it's the second time I've screwed it up. Welcome back to the Turn the Music Podcast. My name is Kyle. We got CJ here. This is episode 18 for season 2, and we are in the third measure of the spirit of music, which is called Artism. But let's talk with CJ for a little bit before we get started. CJ, how are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. It's good to be back and getting into the book again.
Yep, I agree.
Um, I really don't have like much to add to
Okay.
anything.
Well, you took a trip to Albany and you
I
did a little listening. I think I know you put together a playlist at least.
it's really funny. Um, it rained like both trips up and down, and I the day before I'm like I'm gonna put an audiobook on my phone, and I've never read the book Ready Player One,
Mm.
which is like 80s nostalgia and all that stuff like that. So I downloaded it because the audiobook is done by Will Wheaton.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Will Wheaton. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a great activist for mental health. I think he's awesome. So I downloaded the book and I'm like, you know what? Let me see if I like the book. So I started listening to it on Monday on my way up. I couldn't stop listening to it.
Really?
It's just the concept is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
The 80s nostalgia and all the video games and stuff that they talk about, I'm just kind of like, oh my god, I love all that stuff. He does such a great job reading it,
Mm-hmm.
his inflections, the way he does things. And because he's such a nerd gamer or whatever you want to call it, you can tell he's excited to be reading it.
Yeah.
And this was written in 2011. So a lot of what they talk about, which it's based in 2045, a lot of what they're talking about is kind of scary because we're like going in that direction, you
Mm.
know? And then
Yeah.
there's a second book called Ready Player 2 that he also did. So I ended up listening to the book both days. On the
Cool.
way up, on the way down, it was like it's a 15-hour audiobook. I still
Mm-hmm.
have like 8 hours to go, you know. I really didn't listen to the playlist that I made it was like I made Nickel Creek,
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Watkins, and what was the third one I made? Um, Eva Cassidy. And I was like, I'm enjoying the audiobook. I'm gonna stick with it.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Nothing wrong with that.
have you been listening to anything different?
Yeah, I actually went back to Nickel Creek for a little while.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, for whatever reason, I was walking to the parking garage during the week, and I heard this song in my head, and I don't know why it was in my head, but I listened to it. I've been listening to it nonstop. I love this song on the album, the new album Celebrants.
Here's a song for the good folks who we pay to look for bonds in each other's boots. Sure, this line is long, it's longer than my fuse, but you're just doing your job, and what a job you're doing. Look at us trying to move, for the Buddha pond bears our bad news, now and forever caught here between us and our due, as platinums, golds, and silvers sing in the delta.
So this is called "To the Airport." It's off of their newest album called Celebrants. I don't know why, but this thing popped into my head, and I couldn't figure out who it was. I heard it in my head, and I went, "It's definitely Chris's voice." Like, it's not Punch Brothers, but what is it? It's not one of his solo albums. Then it finally hit me that it was the new Nickel Creek album.
Right.
Um, but it's just it's a really cool song. It's about obviously going to the airport, and it's a kind of a tribute to the security workers at the airport.
Right.
Just it's such a cool song. It's such a cool story. And they do this little acapella section. Let me see if I can find it quickly. I just love this little acapella section that they do.
then away we.
That's just after it. Close.
Childless man of business
Go back just a little.
drops her off next to a childless man of business whose cares are few, enough to voice his problems with her toddler on fumes. I heard her tell him off like, who the hell are you to assess this job that you could never do? Just put your headphones on and then away we flew.
And it's just so well done. There's just the violin part is really cool. It's just awesome. I love
She's
it.
brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Who's the bass singing?
It's I forgot the guy's name, but it's not their normal bassist Mark Schacht. It's the guy who produced the album.
Right.
He used a
it's the
different bass
producer
player. I
of the album,
can't
right?
remember what his name was.
Yeah.
But that's who's singing the bass part.
Okay. Because I know it's not
It's not Sean.
not Sean. Yeah, I know it's
Yeah.
not him because his voice
No.
is not that low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I went back and listened to the whole album. It's such a good album.
It's a really well done album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I got to listen to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or tonight. You know, you do this yourself. I'm gonna go listen to it now.
All right. So,
so
with that, CJ's gone, and I'll do this myself.
I'm going to ask you this question though, because remember we talked about them and we said that listening to them is like listening to a group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
So has your week been one of those things where you just kind of needed to listen to a group of friends? Yeah,
for sure.
Because I catch myself in that time, like when you're kind of need that sound. Like I always go to them.
Yep.
I mean, you can go to them for whatever reason, but like it's just like we've said, it just feels like you're listening to a bunch of friends perform in front of you, and it's nice, it's warm.
Yep. Yep, for sure.
So, Kyle, I'm your friend. You can text me anytime you need.
No.
Never. So you okay there?
Yeah, I'm just gagging. Whatever.
To the book.
To the book. So this chapter is called Artism. And hang on, I gotta turn my nose. And the tagline is, sometimes confusion is the doorway to clarity. And I start off right away. And it says, the sun beamed down, following me like an unwanted spotlight. I felt it was mocking me, pointing out to everyone that I was a fraud. Although the sky was clear, the clouds in my brain cast shadows over any remaining confidence, making my path difficult to travel. And my colorful attire was not helping my self-esteem at all. I read this earlier in the week, and I had this bizarre thought during the week. Because this is how my brain works. So we're getting ready for a big meeting tomorrow. It's our board of directors coming in, and there's a lot of stuff falling on me to get done. And there's a lot of people who are very appreciative of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and asking me like for more help than normal. And saying nice things, which they always do, but it's more. And I'm sitting here going, I wonder if I'm just really bad at my job and they feel bad for me. That's why I'm getting all these compliments. And I'm like, but I'm doing a lot of work. I'm doing it well. Maybe I'm not dumb and they're just being honest. But my brain goes to, I'm dumb and they feel bad for me. But so this kind of hit me at that moment,
We're conditioned to do that.
Yeah, I think so. Well, some of us are.
I'm going to say majority of people are conditioned to not accept compliments.
Right.
And when they do accept compliments, and when I say conditions, it's like growing up and how you handle yourself. That's the first thing you do is you're like, I don't think I'm this. That what do they feel bad for? Like it's just it's like a reflex almost. Right. No, I totally get that, but I think sometimes we all do forget. Like, you're good at what you do. If you weren't good at what you do, you wouldn't be where you are.
Right.
You just feel like you could be doing more
Mhm.
and making more and what all that stuff. And I
Right,
think
right.
that's what does it to us.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it was just a weird thought. So,
so
yeah.
I'm just gonna send you random texts now and just be complimentive, and you'll be like, "What?"
You're weird. And then I've got nothing for like pages. So,
No, but I have to say though that that's very interesting that that paragraph kind of like
mhm.
triggered that. It's
Yeah.
I mean, that's a I mean, I I haven't I know that feeling of being complimented, and like my usual response is, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal." Like,
Right.
and when sometimes it should just be thank you or
Hmm.
whatever. And that's very good combination. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
connection's a better word.
Connection.
It's a
That's a
very
good
good
word. Yeah.
connection.
Yeah, and
I don't.
ironically, like the next thing I have is talking about self-esteem and not being good enough, and
How far is that up?
page 46.
Okay, before you jump ahead,
Yeah, go for it.
because um he's going back to Jonathan,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we should kind of set the stage because we really didn't. I just
Right.
kind of
So
jumped into it. So
he finished up with talking to his parents, right? Yes.
yes,
Yes. And then wait a second,
yeah,
hold
his
on. I'm
parents kind of convinced him that he should go back the next day. So he went back to his room to kind of formulate a lesson plan,
right, right, right,
um,
right, right.
and then ended up not formulating a lesson plan, deciding just to wing it.
Right. Hold on a second. No, I think we're ahead of ourselves.
Are we ahead of ourselves?
Yeah, I totally because that's what threw me off for a second because we were talking about. So he just finished with Jonathan
Oh, okay.
and he's heading home, right?
Right.
And he was questioning himself, like, how did he know Jonathan's name? And then he's on his way home and he gets home and he finds out his parents were sitting at the table waiting for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said his mind was wandering and all that stuff. He said his parents were silent and his parents were just sitting there. And I say this all the time, that's why I underlined it. Silence is a powerful tool and patience is a virtue.
Mm.
I say it to my son all the time. I said, patience is a virtue.
Yep.
I said, I know it's hard, but we
Mm-hmm.
need to learn to have that patience. And it's funny because they do go hand in hand. Because
Yep.
in order to be patient, you have to be silent,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't have to be patient to be silent.
Right.
So it's just a very interesting. And he has a really great conversation with his mother and father. And then
Mm-hmm.
this is where it gets into page 46. So we'll bring that to what you were about to say. You said
Oh,
on
I'm
page
on now.
46.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, go. I was just you skipped over the thing I was talking about.
No,
And we
it's fine.
were clarifying where we are. They're in their kitchen
Oh wait,
talking.
I'm not in blind mode. Hang on. That's why I had a hard time reading. Blind mode.
Victor's parents are talking to him because he's not sure what to do.
Yes. Um. So his mom says, "You don't think you're good enough, is that it?" And then Victor responds with, "I just don't want to let him down." And she responds with, "Is it really about him?" And he says, "My mom was smart. My main concern was about letting myself down, and she knew it. I wish I could find something to teach Jonathan that wasn't the real issue. I was scared, and although I had no immediate responsibilities back to Nashville, I hadn't decided how long I would stay in Virginia. I didn't want to start something I couldn't finish." Um, and that's where she says that she should go back and teach him something. But you know, it's something that just I mean, this is what I struggle with all the time is like not thinking I'm good enough at whatever I'm doing. You know,
Yeah, no, I'm the
but
same. I get it. It's the same way with me.
mm-hmm.
Like the random questions that you get, people come to you because they know that like tech stuff. Let's use
Mm-hmm.
this for example, because we both work in tech, even
Yep.
yeah, and similarly, you're in a college, even though you work
Mm-hmm.
for you're contracted, but
Yep.
I work in education. But I have friends like their son texts me and he's like, my computer won't turn on. And I'm like, huh. And I thought about the experience that you had where you had like a power outage and your computer wouldn't pop on and you unplugged it and plugged it back in.
Right.
Honestly, that's how I answered him because I didn't know really of anything else at that moment. So I was like, okay, let me channel that moment. And I said to him, it's
Right.
like, unplug it, count 30 to 40 seconds and plug it back in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that worked.
Yeah.
So, like, we know our stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it's building the confidence
Right.
for ourselves to say we know our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm even trying to work on that myself. I'm trying to hold on a second. Something happened with my recording.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I think I stopped recording. Shoot. How did that happen?
I don't know.
All right, let me see where I stopped at. Hold on a second.
Take your time.
Right? And that worked. So, like, we know our stuff, but it's building the confidence for ourselves to say we know our stuff. You know, and I'm even okay. Actually, where I can cut out something that I stopped at because it actually works. Hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna do this. Can I bring this back here? And then I'm gonna hit record and then we'll just clap again.
Yep.
Would that work?
That works.
Because I'm gonna just start it right after it stopped and then you can okay, cool. Hold on a second. So I'm gonna hit record now, and then you can if you want to count down, that'd be awesome. I'm recording.
Whenever you're ready, let me know.
Yep, go ahead.
3, 2, 1. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So basically it's just building our confidence
Right.
into sharing what we know.
Yep.
And listen, I get it. It's one of the hardest things, I think. And I'm trying to be more on my side. I'm trying to be more confident with my words, you know, and saying, yeah, I know this. But I'm also trying to say, you know what, I really don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and it's okay that I don't know. I'll find an answer for you.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know.
Yep.
His father jumps in and he goes, and I don't know if I'm cutting, like, I don't know if you had any more to add.
No, go ahead. Go for it. You're good.
He says, you're just scared. That's all. And that isn't okay. I'm going to read it the way it's written because I have no way to do it. He goes, you just scared. That's all. And that ain't never a good reason to quit anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've always quit something when I got scared.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It was just, there was always that fear there.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And there are so many people that I've listened to over the years, like Caesar Milan being one of them, you know, the dog trainer. You know, he would always say that when you find something that you're scared of, that's the universe telling you to go do it. Like there was one episode I remember, there was a lady who was terrified of pit bulls, and he's like, "All right, come to my place. We're gonna sit with like 15 pit bulls. And you're just gonna sit next to them." And they just did, you know, and she was fine, and she grew because of it. It was kind of interesting. So,
Do you put yourself in spots that you're scared of, or you're still working to do that?
I'm still working on it.
I'm with you on that. Like, I think also for me, it depends upon what it is.
Right.
You know, like if it's something simple and I can accept the fact that if it doesn't work after, I'll try it.
Right.
But if it's something bigger and I won't be able to accept the fact that it doesn't work, then I'm like, no, it's okay. No, I'm good. Yeah. It's like looking at a piece of food and going, no, I'm not going to try it. They're good. I'm sorry. I eat everything. So,
and continue.
And his father continues to talk. And he talks about how it's like mind over matter in a sense. He goes, change your thoughts, change your life. It's that simple.
Yep.
And he goes on a little bit further and he goes, your thoughts shout while your feelings whisper. Pay attention to both. That's what you need to do. I thought that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find where you are. Sorry.
I'm on page 47, if that helps, at that top paragraph, which is a continuation from the page before.
Yeah, I want to go back just a little bit back to 46.
I'm sorry. That's what, yeah.
Because his dad says, and this is kind of leading into what you were talking about. His dad says, a happy person thinks happy thoughts, a rich person thinks rich thoughts. The opposite is also true. Poor thoughts, sad thoughts, sick thoughts, they all the same. Change your thoughts, change your life. It's as simple as that. So that's where you were. Got it. Um,
Yeah, I didn't preface all that, so
got it.
I'm
Got it.
fine
Yep.
that you read it. No, it's fine that you read
Yep.
all that. That's good.
And then his mom jumps in and says, life is always on your side, baby boy. When your goal is to truthfully help someone, you'll be given the opportunity to do so. Their truth will be opened up to you, and you will know exactly what to do with it. It saddens me that some people, especially teachers, will take advantage and undermine a person's truth just to replace it with their own. But you're not that kind of teacher. I know you're not, she smiled. And I've seen this before where a lot of teachers, not a lot of teachers, but I've seen teachers that are there in a way to bolster their own ego, instead of growing with the student. And that was something I was always aware of. It's a two-way street, and a quote that I've always gone back to is like the Bella Fleck quote. Where he's talking about his group. He says that I'm a leader among equals. He said just because I have final say doesn't mean I'm better than anyone in the group. It's kind of the same thing, that I discuss like with my choirs, with my private students. Like just because I've got 20, 30 years experience more than you, it doesn't make me any better. It just means I have more knowledge to share with you. But I learn
Right.
just as much as my students do in some cases from
Right.
teaching.
It's funny. Part of the training that I went to in Albany, even though we were there for a software, essentially assessment software,
Mm-hmm.
um, the person spoke about how we need to show more than teach.
Mm-hmm.
And we had our discussion. They shared a lot of the stuff, and she said a lot of great things. So I went up to her after, and I told her about these two books.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it's very interesting. I said, even though she said she did music and improv, so she's like, she's not a musician. She doesn't call herself a musician, but she's very much into music. I
Mm-hmm.
said that you would enjoy the books, especially if this is your philosophy.
Right.
I said, you may want to check them out. I said, because a lot of what these books are is about showing versus teaching
Mm-hmm.
and how you acquire knowledge.
Right.
And they're trying to do this shift in education.
Mm-hmm.
And if one person does it, then it may take on. But it's very true. We it's funny. I had and let's take this conversation a different way. I was talking to my friend, and we were talking about, like, when I grew up, respect wise, my parents always said if they're old enough to be your parents, you call them Mr. or Miss or whatever.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's how a lot of us were raised.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in the mindset that if the person is willing to introduce themselves with their first name to a child, even if the child's 6, 7, or 8,
Mm-hmm.
then I have no problem with that, because
Right.
it takes the I'm an adult, I'm a kid thing out of the equation,
Mm-hmm.
and it just makes everybody a human being.
Yep.
So unless the person tells me directly,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if their child calls me Chris or CJ
Right.
or whatever they want to call me. Yo, that guy. So, but
Big hairy
it's,
guy.
yeah, that guy. So I think that all kind of goes together.
Yeah.
And it does go to what he spoke about, is
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff about kids have the ability to be open-minded because they don't know anything yet. And then they learn everything, and they're like, all right, I'm going to shut everybody out because everybody's just ignorant.
Right.
Not our listeners. Our listeners are not
No,
ignorant.
not at all.
They agree with us.
That's right. That's why they listen.
Were you continuing on that with hers?
Yeah, and then she goes on and says, fear is always ahead of us, reminding us that we have time to prepare. You see, we don't fear what's happening, we only fear what might happen. And that's, and the problem is, like, again, going back to my stupid brain, I think that and I was thinking about, this week, part of what makes me good at what I do IT-wise is I'm so worried about what's going to go wrong. I always have a contingency plan for stuff that goes wrong. So it's like, in that sense, it's good, but in another sense, it's like it prevents me from doing a lot of stuff.
Do you feel it sets you up, and lack for a better word, do you feel it sets you up for failure?
In some cases, yes.
Okay.
But in other cases, no. So like, here's an example. So like this, so we're having our board of directors, like I mentioned earlier, and one of the guys came to me on Wednesday. He's like, this website that we're supposed to be demoing isn't working. It was working yesterday. There's some block on the network somewhere that's preventing this website from being resolved. And I was like, immediately I was like, oh, I'll just VPN you into my house, and that'll get around all the the blocks, and it worked. But like I had that contingency plan. Like I knew that that's why I built a VPN back to my house in case something goes wrong with the network. I need to bypass something. I can set up a VPN to anyone and just have them go through my network and make it work.
Right.
And I've got an external router there that sits there, and if I need to bypass the network, I can use my own router and bypass the network and do it that way. I've always got a contingency plan, so I'm always prepared that way. But at the same time, it's like there's stuff that I've always wanted to do in my life that like I'm afraid to do.
Because you don't have a contingency plan?
No, because I'm just afraid of failure. And I guess maybe there is no contingency plan for the failure. Maybe that's what it is.
Right, because you're in your work life, you've experienced all the possibilities that could happen,
Right.
which is why you're able to build a contingency plan
Right.
on something to that end.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing something in your personal life that you haven't experienced yet, yeah, you don't have
Exactly.
a contingency to
Yep.
it.
Yep.
No, so I get that.
Yeah.
And it does. That's that fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, for the longest time, I always said to myself, I'm like, I really don't fear anything. Are you being attacked?
Yes, there's a gnat.
For those that are listening, Kyle just got attacked by a gnat.
Yes.
It's pretty funny. Go watch the video on YouTube. What was I going saying? Everybody's like, what are you scared of? What are you scared of? I don't really have a big fear. I used to have a fear of heights, realized that was more psychological than it was an actual fear. And whatever. But I always had a fear of failure, but I never considered that a fear. But it's a legitimate fear if you think about it, because it keeps you from doing certain things.
Yep.
And
I've got a quote somewhere. It's in my Notion. Where's my Notion?
You had a Notion?
I had a Notion. It's a quote by Buddha, I think.
Buddha's he's great.
Yeah, and it's taking forever to open.
That's what I need to get in my office. I need to get my Buddhas out. I'm gonna welcome them into an office and put them on a shelf taller than me, which is not hard to do. But
yes. The quote is, "Fear does not prevent death; it prevents life."
Yes, 100%. I agree with that.
Yep.
Which is funny because, like you said, it's sometimes hard to get past that. Fear.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree.
Yep, for sure.
Going further down. I don't know if I'm skipping anything that you're going to say, but the mom says something, life won't ever steer you wrong, but you have to do your part. Treat life right, and life will treat you right. You know that.
Yep, that's exactly what I had next.
Yeah. I think this is, I know we've known each other long enough that we both lead everything we do with kindness towards anybody we work with, anybody we talk to, anything we do. Even though we give each other a hard time on here, it's just, that's how much we've built a friendship between the two of us.
Right.
And, when I read that, I'm sitting here going, like, I know I'm making the right choices with certain things, especially when it comes to other people. Then it's like making those right choices for yourself.
Right.
That's and in a sense, and you may feel the same way, I feel selfish. That word that means that you're thinking about yourself. And I'm sure you feel the same way because you're not that type of person. Right. So it's just, and this is what, like, and you get that out of this book too.
Yeah.
And that's, which is why we consider these two books like Bibles. So, I don't have much more after that, so you take it.
Sure. So the next thing that happens is he gets ready to go to Jonathan's, and as he's walking there, he had a thought that appeared in his head that was, the birds don't sing for money, they sing because the sun comes up. It was an eye-opening thought, one I could learn from. Which made me think of another thought that I heard someone say once. Um, what if the birds aren't singing? What if they're screaming in pain?
Where have I heard that from?
It's a comedian. I don't know who said it at one point. There was a
You
comedian
must
who
have
said
shared that with me then at some point,
probably.
because that's the only way I would have known it.
Yeah. I don't remember who it was. I'll Google it and figure out who it was, but
That's very interesting that that opposite take on it. Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
But yeah, I mean, and I think that that's, as musicians, there are a lot of musicians who are out there doing it for the money, and there are others that are out there doing it for the love of music, and you know.
I like that's why I like Nickel Creek so much. It's
Mhm.
not that I don't like make a living off your stuff. Don't
Right.
get me wrong. I'm not
Hmm.
disagreeing with that. But like I don't feel as though they're 100% in it for the money. Like I don't
Right.
think the money is what's drawing them in that direction. I think it's
Right.
the fact that they truly enjoy what they're doing, and that's why, because they love sharing that out. Like I don't think if they didn't like what they were doing or didn't do it for the right reasons, they wouldn't have done Watkins Family Hour,
Right.
you know, which they don't really travel with. They just play
Hmm.
with, because they live in California, so they just play locally.
Right. And I think the other thing is like, and if you think about the way they put out albums, like there's no set time that they put them out. They just put them out when they're ready.
Right.
If you look at some of the other musicians, especially in the pop, area, it's they're putting out albums every year because like
They're
that's
contracted.
yeah, yeah.
They're contracted. Look at Hannah Wicklund. She
Mm-hmm.
purposely created her own label and production company and to
Yep.
press her own vinyls and to do her own
Mm-hmm.
stuff, because now she's not restricted based upon
Right.
how a conglomerate or whatever you want to call it wants them
Mm-hmm.
to do it.
Yep.
And if she wants to record one album, play for 10 years and record another, she can do that if she wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's when you start seeing those, because even Victor Wooten doesn't put out albums
Right.
regularly.
Right. And he's had his own record label now, and Bella Fleck and the Flecktones are doing the same thing. And like thinking about it, like the groups that I really enjoy, that's what they do. You know, Robert Randolph and the Family Band, same thing. Mingo Fish Trap, same thing. It's
Right.
you know, they put it Tower of Power. They've been doing it for 50 years. Like
Right.
when they're ready, they do it.
Right.
So.
Very true. So he gets to the apartment building to go meet up with Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Runs into Jonathan as he's coming down the steps, and Jonathan states that he's going to go to the record store.
Yes.
But he asks Victor Wooten, he goes, "How is my teacher doing today?" Which throws Victor off. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't expect that. He goes, "Teacher? I'm not your teacher." Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm okay, I guess. It's a beautiful day, don't you think? Changing the subject, because that process,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that Jonathan, just kind of was whatever, moved along and took him to the record store. So I'll look. I don't know if you were gonna read this, but I think we should give a little bit of a background
Yep.
of
Go for it.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
So Victor goes, "Jonathan told me that he had been diagnosed with autism. He didn't really know what that meant. He expressed himself clearly and easily and seemed to be comfortable around people. He joked with me and the salesman, displaying a sense of wit that was well beyond the norm, and his knowledge of music was impressive. If this is what autism was, I was cool with it. In my eyes, Jonathan was blessed with artism, ARTISM."
Yep.
And then he goes on to say that, Jonathan said that whenever the doctors told him that he'll never be able to do something, he took that as a mean to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So he was told he couldn't live on his own. He lived on his own. Couldn't
Right.
play in a band, played in a band.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't drive a car, driving a car.
That he bought with money that he made playing
Playing in
music.
the band, right? Yep. And then he talked about how, um, some individuals with autism do not make eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan did, and Jonathan said he practiced this while he at the end of gigs with people that were drunk because
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't care if he was looking
Right.
at him straight in the eye or not.
Yep.
I have to say, whether that's true or not,
Mm-hmm.
that really is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like even like Victor says, it's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love that whole little piece because he doesn't sit on the autism description. He just explains who Jonathan is.
Right. Yep.
And I think that's fantastic. Do you want to take it from there? Or you want me to keep going?
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So, and I'm just paraphrasing some stuff so we have a little background. He went. They got to the record store, and then Jonathan stated that there wasn't any music, which Victor didn't notice right away, but music is typically playing. And Jonathan asked to preview a record, but the record owner said the record player was broken.
Hence the no music.
And then the repairman or so came inside and came in and left and said it couldn't be fixed. Jonathan said he did try, and the record store owner said that's what he told me. And that's what they did. They went on and Jonathan confronted the record repairman and record player repairman and said, you didn't do your job. And without answering, the repairman placed a pair of headphones over his ears and walked around Jonathan and out the front door. So they don't know why he was rude.
Mm-hmm.
And by going further down, the record store owner apologized and gave Jonathan the record for free. And then this I thought was interesting. The sun was almost directly overhead. We left the store and walked toward Jonathan's apartment in silence. To break the mood, I made a comment about the birds. When the sun is overhead, animals are less active. That's why birds are so quiet. Have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
I've never, because you're more, and I don't mean this to sound funny, but you're more into birds than I am in that respect because you do photograph them and stuff. Do they, I've never paid attention to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so as a photographer, so photographing birds is a little bit difficult because the best light during the day for photographing is usually around sunrise and sunset because the light comes straight through. And when it's during the highest part of the day, like your noon, your 2 o'clocks, it's coming down. So you get a lot of shadows. Right. But when you're shooting with the light going this way, it's better light. But the problem is, as the sun's setting, you're losing light. And when you're shooting birds, you need to have a very fast shutter speed in order to freeze the action as they're flying. So It's kind of this hard, balance that you have to do to have enough light, but not the shadows, not the harsh light. So yes, they're also less active during the day, which is actually better for photographers because if they're less active during that point of the day, the light is also bad during that point of the day. So you avoid that part of the day. So it's usually the morning and the evening is when you go out to shoot.
That's interesting. Well, you're an ornithologist.
No, I'm not.
No, I tried.
I'm just a nerd.
Huh?
Just a nerd.
There's nothing wrong with being a nerd.
Nope.
4 eyes. So
look who's talking.
As we both wear glasses.
Yeah. And I put my Kindle in blind mode.
And let's see. Let's go a little further.
So the album that they pick up, have you ever listened to it?
No, and it's funny because I do want to listen to it. I may have back in the day, and I just don't remember.
Got it. So the album is called Donny Hathaway Live. For those that don't know, Donny Hathaway was a brilliant musician, songwriter, and a huge influence on Stevie Wonder. And if you listen to the two of them sing, Stevie Wonder is almost, I don't want to say a carbon copy of Donny Hathaway, but they're very, very similar. So let's just play just a little bit because I was going to say, why not? Yeah. So here's this. This is the opening track called "What's Going On."
There's too many of you around, yeah. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we gotta find a way to bring some love in here today. Father, Father.
Very, very Stevie Wonder-ish, down to like the keyboard parts, and especially it's in the upper register, you really hear kind of that Stevie Wonder sound come out of him.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, I'm sure you guys. I'll move faster. I'm sure you all recognize this tune once we get into it. Hit the play button. There we go.
'Cause only love company. You know we gotta find a way to bring some love in here today. Wicked life.
Where's the refrain?
Hey, yeah.
There it comes.
What's going on? I wanna know what's going
So it's a great album. It's got the Carole King tune, "You Got a Friend," and Donny Hathaway killed himself in 1972.
Before this the live album, I think, came out.
I think so.
That's
and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and the story goes that he thought that there were people following him trying to steal his music. And then he eventually jumped off the roof of his hotel building and killed himself.
1979.
79.
No, so this came out before 1979.
Yeah.
I think the last album he recorded was. Hold on a second.
Hang on, I've got his discography up.
Yeah.
The last studio album. Oops.
It was with Roberta Flack too.
Yep. Yeah, he did a lot of work with Roberta Flack.
Yeah.
73, 78 was the best of. I think it like 73. There was one in 79.
No, that's what they're saying. Like they were recording all day, and
Right.
she said he was good. Yep. This is what it says.
That's
in the book.
Right. Yep.
Like,
yep.
Yeah, and he talks about.
Yep.
And they apparently, when he wrote this, he didn't know the reason why, because he said that he didn't have any drugs or alcohol in his system, so it wasn't something that was that. He said he wonders if it was the fact that famous musicians, their lives are right out in front of them, and that's the difficult part. Just to go back a little bit, because Victor makes a point to explain that, and we've spoken about this a little bit, which is part of the reason why we do our live show, is that the social event of getting a record and sitting down and listening to a whole new album with friends and family is not something that happens all the time,
right?
Because of the fact that music has become digital, and it now makes it a more, and not necessarily in a good way, but also not in a bad way, a more individualized experience. And he states that when he moved to Nashville, CDs had already been taking place of vinyl, and MP3s were on the horizon. And listening to music has gradually become an individualized experience. And he said it was the last time they did this. We did a live show back on March, I think it was March 30th, because that's when I was in Ohio with you, and that's when we did a listening of Nickel Creek Celebrants.
Yep.
And we played the whole album. We both did not listen to it on purpose.
Yep.
And both listened to it for the first time while everybody else who was listening with us, and we read through some of the cover notes. And I hope we get to do that again soon. I know Hannah Wicklund has a new album coming out in October, and I'm thinking maybe we can kind of make that happen.
Yeah.
Is pick one, and because I think that even though we're digital, even though we're live through a streaming service, it's still kind of bring that and make that a social event,
exactly,
which is what we're trying to do.
Yep.
So
here's a little bit about Donny Hathaway. So this is just about his mental illness. So it says during the peak of his career, Hathaway began experiencing severe bouts of depression and exhibiting unusual behavior. In 1971, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, for which he was prescribed various medications. At one point, Hathaway was prescribed 14 different medications that he was to
Wow.
take twice a day. After Hathaway was diagnosed and began taking medication, his mental state improved. However, Eula Hathaway has stated that her father became less than diligent about following his prescription. Hathaway's mental illness wreaked havoc on his life and required several hospitalizations. The effects of his depression and severe mood swings also drove a wedge in Roberta Flack's friendship. They did not reconcile for years and did not release additional music until the successful release of The Closer to Get You in 1978. So yeah, I remember reading somewhere that he thought that there are people like following him trying to steal his music. I don't remember where I read that. But just to
I
give
mean,
you, go ahead.
it makes sense if he had schizophrenia. He
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
felt that way.
And then
Yeah.
just to give you, this is from this is in Rune. So Rune is the app I use for music, and they give you like articles on a lot of artists.
Not
So
sponsored.
not sponsored. Please sponsor us. So influence. This is really interesting just to hear what people have said about him. So according to Allison Keyes from NPR, Hathaway's solo recordings are part of the foundation of American soul music and have influenced performers and R&B singers Alicia Keys and Aaliyah, to rapper Common, to singer-guitarist George Benson. He was named the 49th greatest singer of all time in 2010, published by Rolling Stone. Justin Timberlake called him the best singer of all time. Stevie Wonder was quoted by David Ritz as saying, I'm sorry, when Donnie sings any song, he owns it. Stevie Wonder was quoted by David Ritz. Amy Winehouse called Hathaway her favorite artist of all time. I mean, just so many, artists, praising him for what he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and the stuff is great, and the live album really is very, very good.
Yeah.
If you have not listened to it, it is definitely worth a listen.
Okay. Now that we shared all that, trying to recoup.
Recoup from the tangent that Kyle has just gone on.
No. It's what it is. It's like a bittersweet thing to talk about someone in such a high praise, but at the fact that it's such a sad thing of what happened. So they basically listened to the album, the whole album, and then the last song, which is like a 13 to 14 minute song. It's the longest song on the album. There's a bass solo. And
so the track is called Voices Inside, Everything is Everything.
And Victor said, listen to this solo. And he encouraged Jonathan to continually listen to it. And he let him read through the notes to find out who it was. And Jonathan's response was, wow, he's amazing and very articulate. And he said, simplicity at its best. Which I think is fantastic, because sometimes the most simplest improvisations are the best, because they fit so nicely.
And what I like about that whole interaction is when Jonathan hears it for the first time, the first thing he does is reach for his bass, and Victor says, no, listen first.
Right.
And I think that's really important, is, because, sometimes a lot of us just want to consume, but we don't always take a moment to sit back and relax and enjoy what's going on. I think that was your Victor saying, listen, just take a minute, listen to it first. Really hear what's going on before you try to learn it.
And we talked about this because one of the questions we've asked people that we've spoken to on the podcast is, depending upon who they are. So if they're a vocalist, do you pay attention to the words, to the singing? What are you listening to first?
Right.
And I do try to listen to everything all at once and then break it down. But sometimes it is difficult as a singer or a sax or whatever, and you want to listen to that main part.
Right.
So, it's very true. And that's a lot of what happens over the next page and a half, is that he's just like, keep listening, keep listening, keep listening.
Yep. And
And
like going back to
then
the first song that we played, To the Airport, like when I first heard it, like it was the sound of it that captivated me, and like it was the fourth or fifth listen that I heard it was like that's when I understood the story behind it. I didn't understand it because I wasn't listening to the words at first. It was just the harmonies and the structure, and I didn't focus on the words. That's how I listen.
right,
I go right to the instrumental stuff.
right, and I as a singer, like I want to go to the vocalists and
Right.
listen to their singing, but I really do my best to listen to it as a whole before I
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Right.
And then I'll listen to the album again and again and again and again, and and then it goes from there.
Yep.
So yeah, I I'm with you on that. Uh, so they listened to it for a while, and he then allowed Jonathan to pick up his bass guitar. But there is something that Victor writes. He goes, learning when it comes to listening and listening and listening, to paying attention. He goes, learning in this way developed my musical ear quickly and thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that because I remember listening to singers in college to kind of just get a feel for the
Yep.
song that I was about to learn or whatever. But I also feel like that just works for everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Like, I'll ask you questions about tech stuff, and if I don't sit and listen to you, I don't know what the heck's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you do have you're more knowledgeable on that stuff than I am, and there are
Right.
times that I do have to, ask you a question, and I'm listening to you, and if it wasn't for those times, there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of things I wouldn't have been able to do.
Yep. Yep.
So
And I think this goes back to like what we've said. Like everyone should sing in a choir or a band at one point because like during those rehearsals, like there's a lot of times where like other voices or other parts are rehearsing their stuff. Like the first time through, like I listened to it, but then like the more it goes through, like I start singing the other parts, and because I can learn it faster that way. And once you understand what other parts are doing and how they interact, it gets so much easier to learn. And like especially with like composers and stuff, when you start understanding the style, when it comes to like reading stuff for the first time, like when you understand the style and where the stuff is going, like it's so much easier to learn and pick up and a lot more fun that way, I
oh
think.
yeah, I totally agree. And Victor does tell Jonathan that when he was younger, there wasn't a lot of people to teach him in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, and
Right.
this is how he learned,
Mm-hmm.
unless the person that was teaching him actually knew what they were playing. um and he goes, he just learned it the old fashioned way, but apparently Jonathan was able to pick it up very quickly.
Yep. And I think as a musician, one of the best skills that you can learn is to pick a recording and to figure it out. Don't go out and buy the sheet music, but sit down and figure out what's going on.
Right, absolutely. And then so they stopped the quote unquote lesson, made plans for the next day. He walked towards the door, and Jonathan said, I've never had a teacher like you.
Mm-hmm.
And Victor smiled because it lifted his confidence, and he said, I've never had a student like you, which was both literal and metaphorical.
Yep.
And he closed the door, and Jonathan was continuing to play that solo.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I left him just as I originally found him, with a bass guitar in his lap. And Victor left with a broken unicycle.
Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the chapter.
It is. And it just grows exponentially as we go along.
Yes.
Like so much starts to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because of the next chapter. I think the next
Yep.
chapter really starts to pull it forward.
Yes. Yep.
I really and this is going to sound funny for a moment, but I really enjoy how Victor puts his struggle in this book.
Oh yeah.
I really do. I appreciate it from someone who struggles in a similar way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you read the book, it's not just, oh, it's nice to see that someone at his level went through similar things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's nice to read that someone in general just
Yeah.
went through those things.
Yep.
And and it helps in a weird way build a little bit more confidence when it comes to doing certain things.
Yep.
You don't have nothing to say?
No.
Really?
Yep.
Are you
That's
reading
it.
anything else? Have you gone through the Awakening Spirit book yet?
I finished it. Yeah.
I have
Finished a
to
couple
start
weeks
reading
ago.
it. I have to start because you said it's very dense, so I'm trying to
Yeah.
like mentally prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Like in a good way, but
Yes, dense in a good way.
yeah.
And I'm dense in a bad way
Like,
because it
I
took
was
me
gonna say
a
not like
lot to understand it. So
not like me. So apparently neither one of us are
Yeah.
dense in a good way. I don't float. No, just
all right. So
so
with that, we should see you all next week
yes.
for measure 4. Yes.
Measure 4.
And we'll meet another new character next chapter. So
Yes. Character development is big in this one.
mm-hmm.
But in such a good way though.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like Blues Brothers, they're getting the band back together.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So with that, we'll see you all next week. Make sure you're following us on our social medias stuff, and we do live stream Friday night and Sunday evening, and yeah, that's about it.
That's it. Yeah.
Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah.
Let's try that again. Have a good one, everyone. I can't talk. I'm done. The end.
Until next time.
Yes. Until next time. Have a good one.